even people like Marek Kaniewska, I think all of them have come, Neil not so much from TV, but certainly Stephen and Marek have. And I think they have a fine sense of
but they haven't pulled it off yet. I mean, they haven't actually done it yet. They haven't been there and pulled it off like Dickie has.
I mean, is that to say they shouldn't have been given the chance?
Well, I mean, you make your own chance. Once you're given a chance, they should have, if they want to do it, they make the decision to go there and try it, because it is a different thing. You know that, I know that. Doing a film for Channel 4 is different from making a Hollywood movie. Now, you may take the high moral ground and say, well, you're compromising, you're selling out. I happen not to think that. I think to make a successful commercial film that can speak to people is the dream. You know, to have lines around the block and actually get people out of a weekend to have a good time and to tell them something, to me is much more of a dream than getting huge numbers on television. God knows I started on Coronation Street, you don't get bigger numbers than that. And I think the people you mentioned, they've got to do it. They've got to go there and show, like Adrian Lyne or Tony Scott or Ridley Scott or Hugh Hudson or whatever, or Alan Parker, that you can actually work make a Hollywood movie that is successful, and it's not easy.
Okay, well, we'll just take a break then. We'll be back in a few minutes to talk about the films themselves. Welcome back. Now, however good the popcorn and hot dogs are at the new multi-screen cinemas, people only pay the money for a ticket for one reason, and that's the film. In the end, you have a great night out if you see a film that genuinely affects you, and a lousy evening if the film's a turkey. But the sad fact is that when people talk excitedly about the films that touch them, with a very few exceptions, they're not talking about British films. So why aren't we making films here that really capture audiences' imaginations? Well, what films have touched all of you? And you must be completely honest about this. I mean, have you been touched by a British film, or I'll bet you the things that really moved you have been American?
Distant Voices. I saw Distant Voices about 3 weeks ago, and I was absolutely shattered by it. I thought it was one of the most exciting, original pieces of work that I'd seen in donkey's years, and I just pray that it gets the promotion and that the circuits will hold it in its place for long enough in order to allow the gathering of a word-of-mouth audience.
Yeah, I think we should make Terence Davis a national treasure and ensure that he can go on. The worrying thing is, I mean, the film is absolutely staggering. I just hope producers are going to rush to him and...
But then so is Wanda.
Yeah, I think
there's a marvelous,
very funny movie.
Wonderful piece.
So are we sitting here just saying that all the films that just move us have all been British then?
No, I don't think the others. I don't think Hanif answered. I think the one starring the estate agent is the one I'm thinking.
No, I think it has just been an extraordinary period, having two films that have actually, A Fish Called Wanda and Distant Voices, that actually work internationally.
Well, there's lots of good English films, but they're not big, mainstream, huge grossing movies, and I don't think you can expect that. I don't think you should want that. I mean, I don't think you have the resources here to do it, or the audience to do it, or the money or the manpower to do it. But I don't think you should worry about that. I don't think you should be defensive. There are great, terrific movies made out of Britain, which find very good markets in America. Not huge markets, not Fatal Attraction, not Gandhi or whatever, not $100 million films, but they have a voice. And this idea of all this neurosis going around saying we should be making $20 million movies that are going to gross $100 million, there aren't the subjects here, there isn't the expertise here, I don't think, to do them and to market them.
But why can't you make a kind of Fatal Attraction film in Britain? I mean, why does something like that always have to be set in America to touch people and move people? Why couldn't it have been set in Paddington?
Well, I think it's not how it's set, it's how it's made. I mean, we've been constantly talking about subjects and, you know, writing films and what subjects can be found, and you talked about having a voice, but I would say, how about the look of the film?
Well, I mean, the whole thing of a movie, not
and I think that you could set Fatal Attraction anywhere and make it the way it's made. You know, you could set it in a London suburb, and it would be just as appealing. I think it's to do with the kind of filmmaking.
No, I don't think it would. I think that Americans have a very strong sense of their own culture, extremely strong. They are very... I mean, one only has to go to one of these previews in the States, and, you know, I've been to many previews now, and you're immensely aware of their real reticence and their real nervousness when people start speaking in strange accents, or start speaking and subtitles come on the screen. There's an immediacy that American audience need, and I think they will always have this language barrier.
But you've immediately done what I'm saying, which is to leap away from the thing of how the film's made, right? Which you've just, I mean, the language thing may be one issue, but I still think, I mean, I hate Fatal Attraction, but you take Top Gun, which is a film which stands for everything I loathe and despise. But it is made in this exciting, spacey, dynamic way, which is entirely filmic. Everything happens in it on the film, not in front of the film in some place where, you know, people are having a drama and the camera is kind of just filming it, which is what so much British filmmaking is like. And I would say that the Terence Davies film, for me, is on the list with Top Gun as something which is totally cinematic. Everything happens on the film. You know, you're drawn into it through music and the way that the images work and stuff. You know, it's a different kind of film to Top Gun, but they're both, to me, totally cinematic.
Well, that's interesting.
One of them I like, one I hate, but...
About the cultural point then, do you think then you're putting your finger on something about British culture there, that we perhaps prefer to be respectable rather than popular? I mean, Richard, is that the case?
I hope not.
I think it's to do with the fact that in this country we've got much more of a literary tradition than a cinematic tradition.
I think
What we're actually,
Exactly. I mean, I noticed
what we're actually good at in this country is words or plays or stories rather than the cinema. There really aren't many great British film directors of calibre of Ray or Fellini or Bergman or whatever. But as I say, what we are good at, actually writing stories, is language.
And do you think that we're also getting mixed up with our theatrical tradition, that people see the cinema as an extension of theatre instead of a completely different craft?
For the reason that Hanif mentions, absolutely. It has always been, cinema has always been frowned upon by the intelligentsia, really, because our word is all the way
that's what drove me away. I mean, it's attitude that actors, I mean, the real art is the theatre, and they do film or television just to pay the rent.
Oh, come on,
And
I mean, the
also
Americans do occasionally write great scripts.
Yes, they're great.
I think they write brilliant screenplays, because also they know that screenwriting is different to writing, which people can't get in their head.
And movie acting. I mean, the Americans have movie stars. We don't.
A screenplay is not a play, and it's not a novel, and it's also not just people saying stuff. There is so much words in British films. There are so many words in British films, and they seem to be loaded with dialogue.
People would actually, in films, talk intelligently to each other. I mean,
well, no, but if you want to say something, I think, personally, in a film, you don't have people say it. You have to make the film work to say it some other way, as I think Cry Freedom did. I mean, I just don't think you can have people be always saying things, which is somehow carrying what a film's about. And I think that...
I think there's also a sort of hangover from sort of Sunday school that somehow a lot of British people want movies to be uplifting rather than entertaining, and it's easier for them to deal with cinema if it's uplifting, because there is this sort of this class thing about cinema, whereas, you know, in France the intelligentsia embraced cinema from the 20s. It's never been quite here to like cinema, and I think
it is very difficult to break through to make films that are intelligent, that are about something important, that are about real issues, and to break through to large audiences. That's what we haven't been able to
That's what the Americans are so good at.
Why can't we do it though? Because we're admitting that we've got technicians and we've got everything. Have we no ideas?
It's bloody hard for the writer. How does a writer get a break into cinema? How many scripts do we read which maybe interest us? Where are the opportunities of getting those actually backed and financed? The chances are, I would have thought on television, but you would know much better than I, but I would have thought that on television you are commissioned, and the chances are, once you put an idea up, that is going to see the light of day. Yes. The number of movie scripts that don't see the light of day must be terrifying. And so writers say, to hell with it. I don't care if I get paid. I don't want to write something that goes in the ash can. All right, it pays my weekly gas bill, but that's not enough. I want to see it made.
But surely,
and so writers tend to move away from cinema, I think.
Can't it just be that we're not maybe thinking big enough? I mean, perhaps if the writers here were having big ideas, they would get on the screen.
I'm saying what Judith is saying. I just don't think we're that good at it. I think, for both what you say, that writers aren't encouraged here, so they aren't trained in the writing of screenplays. I think Hanif is exceptional in this. Yes. I think most people are trained into and interested in having their work done, which is the television and the theatre. I don't think we write very good screenplays out here, and I don't think we're very good movie actors. I think we can't hold a candle to the great American movie stars that exist, and these are the people that carry the images, carry the words that people pay money to see.
Well, I think it's also to do with the fact that producers are so unadventurous. If producers went to writers and said, look, write a film, instead of saying, look, there's this book called Room of the View, why don't you make this into a film, or here's Handful of Dust, let's make that into a film. If they went to writers and said, look, write any film that you want, here's the money, if there was that kind of encouragement, that sort of initiative, I think we would have better film writers and we'd have more original screenplays and they would be more cinematic rather than adaptations, which is what we mostly have.
We need some sort of studio system. But sort of listening to all this and you saying, you know, we do this in television. It is actually because the producers are protected to an extent by the existence of a studio system.
Well, let's not get back into the argument really where the funding comes from. Let's keep on the concept of the ideas that we're giving. For instance, if you take the audiences that go to cinema the most throughout the world, it's teenagers. Now, we're not making any films aimed at teenagers the way the Americans churn them out. Steve's had a go at a couple of them, obviously, but we haven't done any more. Now, why not? Why are we ignoring the main audience? That's like ignoring your market who buys margarine, saying I'm not going to have an advert for them. Seems crazy. What's happening?
I think because producers and film directors in Britain are too intelligent to make films for teenagers.
Oh, that's really rude to teenagers. I'm sorry, that's the second time I've said something like that. But actually, the thing is, what teenagers go to see are genre pictures. They go to horror movies a lot. That girl in the extract that everybody saw, talking about going to Poltergeist, and Nightmare on Elm Street, which you distributed, which I think, you know, is just brilliant. It's such an interesting series of films. And, you know, those are very interesting films. They're films that say things. I mean, you're very keen on saying things. They say things, but not in an obvious verbal way, but they do speak to people's experiences and anxieties, not in kind of realist ways, but in completely other ways. And, you know, teenagers go to masses of sort of real high genre pictures that I think directors and screenwriters here, you know, feel are kind of too dumb to be making or something.
Yes, why?
They are. I think these films are actually completely fatuous, and I think you're patronising young people.
How many of them have you seen?
By thinking that I've seen enough to know that they are not.
Though, I mean, but you see, that's like, I think in all that is the whole problem about what we're talking about. You know, cinema isn't a real thing. It's not about real things in a direct way. It is, you know, it handles things that people are concerned with. But I mean, you're demanding that, you know, you're saying that kind of major forms of filmmaking that, you know, that great directors have worked in, if you want to get into greatness and things like that, you know, are just pointless.
To me, there is a film industry in America. People go in their millions to see films. Here, it's not the same. People just don't go. There isn't the same money. There isn't the same concentration that you have in the States. There is money there to pay screenwriters to do the kind of things that you accuse British producers of not doing.
But it's not just money, it's also how you think about it, as is shown by the argument that we just had.
And is it passion as well? I mean, are we lacking passion? You don't get a couple of teenage dates going out and say, is there a new poster on?
Passion generally about cinema here. The
we're all
indigenous...
passionate,
we are. I'm talking about
should do better.
So why is it not showing on screen, the passion,
The
then?
art form of America is movies. Where the theatre is our great stuff. This is what our media gets excited about. This is a very rare occasion. You know, how many of us? 7 of us, 8 of us, sitting down here and talking about movies for half an hour or an hour. How many programs have you seen in the last 5 years on British television that deals with cinema on this level? There, you can count them on one hand. In America, they're on all the time. In France, they're never off. In Italy, they're on. In West Germany, they're on. The public is not excited about cinema. I mean, in the last 4 years it's gone up from, I don't know, 50-something million up to about 80 million, so it is on the rise. But it hasn't been.
Can I just talk about
the same in other countries.
elitism in a sense? I mean, let me have a slight go at you. I mean, Judith is right. You make Breakfast Club, you make Nightmare on Elm to create an industry, to get movies made, to get people into the cinema, to create a wealth around the industry. When you ran Goldcrest, I think your movies were elitist. I don't think you went down to what Hanif might call the lowest common denominator, but to make films that people would simply pay their £3 and go and see and have a good time. Sod whether they had anything important to say, but at least it created wealth within the industry so that other things could be made.
But even that, I think, is elitist, because, I mean, I'm saying they are interesting films.
Well, maybe, but that's not their prime purpose. Their prime purpose, if you're running a Hollywood
studio... But that's part of my point about self-consciousness, that when you just make a film...
No, I think you have to make, if you're running an American studio, you have to make rational decisions. You have to say, these films here, what they're doing, Coming to America, or the next Eddie Murphy film, is going to bring money into the studio to do a whole range of other films, so I can make Gandhi or Cry Freedom or whatever.
But you're still separating two different things. If you look at like the great low-budget B movies and stuff, which are now really fashionable, you know, they're really...
Well, I think you've got to live in the real world in that. I mean, I don't know whether you agree with what Judith is saying, but I think we've never managed to exist on making, as we did presumably with what you're talking about, the Hammer films and the Ealing comedies, good popular entertainment, because that was all it ever was. But it did create an interest, it did create a movie-going public. What we're doing here, all the films that we make on, you know, Hanif's films, all your films, in a sense riding on the back of American movies. I mean, American movies are creating the appetite to go to the cinema. I've never created that.
I've tried, I mean, I have attempted.
No, I know you have. I know
Absolute
you have.
Beginners and with Shag and now with High Spirits, and I will continue to do this, which is to try and make those higher budget films in order that our company can still keep distributing the kind of films we distribute and keep making the kind of films we're making as well. I mean, it is, I agree 100% with you. It has to go hand in hand. One has to accept the fact that the market is demands one particular type of product on a mass level, but there is another kind of product that you hope will become more popular, and that you hope by if you keep making and keep acquiring and distributing, you can get a wider audience for.
But you guys are still saying, like, here's this kind of schmucky films that lots of people like.
I like those schmucky
and they
films.
can subsidise, you know, these kind of more serious
Judith,
films.
I agree with you.
I mean, I'm just saying that if you love cinema, you love schmucky cinema too.
I think Nightmare on Elm Street is a great movie.
But Lynda,
you know, so I mean, there's no argument, obviously.
Lynda, can I just ask you, is what's letting us down here then just our basic cultural hang-ups? Are we just unable to do it?
I think the basic problem is that we're all sort of, everyone's is too well bred. And what I want is, I'd like to see more hooligans in the cinema. I mean, let the hooligans loose. I mean, let's make movies like Blue Velvet and Something Wild. I'm tired of sort of E.M. Foster, where you kind of, there aren't any surprises with that kind of cinema. You know, we all know the story. And I'd like to see a cinema that's wild and anarchic. And I saw an ad for a film by, I think it was Almodovar, the Spanish director, and it called it provocatively controversial. Now,
Laura Desire.
Yeah, but the new one, Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. But you know, how many British films do you say would you call provocatively controversial?
I think Lynda's absolutely right. I think standards are much too high in the British cinema. We've got to do our best to bring them down. What we need in the British cinema is much more filth and anarchy, and we should have moral watchdogs to make sure that we are making films that are sort of disgusting.
It's also a case, though, that maybe the big ideas that are communicated through American films cross every border. I mean, everybody can understand what they're saying, even though we don't particularly identify with the characters in it. Now, again, I don't understand why we can't do that, because surely British people have big ideas, have international ideas.
Well, sometimes we do.
But it's
not the ideas, is it?
It's incorrect to say that British films which find any market don't in fact cross all the frontiers. Vast number of British films are in fact either subtitled or dubbed, and they find a world market. And pictures that you've made. I mean, I suppose we all keep going back because it was one of the first, but Chariots of Fire went throughout the world, literally throughout the world. I don't have barrier problems, frontier problems.
I wonder if there's a kind of self-censorship with writers here, that they've got so used to the problems of trying to work within the industry. So I remember when I was at Columbia, I went around all the agents and talked to a lot of writers saying, forget the £2 million level. In fact, it'd be much easier for Columbia if it's 3 times that, because the studio will understand that. Think big, don't worry about the budget, just come with the ideas. And very little came out of that. And it's as if everyone's very canny, and they don't really want to let rip and let their imagination run riot.
This is what worries me about the Channel 4 constraint. I really do think that what it did was tremendous, and what it has done and is doing. But I do think if everything has to be determined by the premise which apply to a Channel 4 film on 4 movie, we shall end up in a terrible state. I think we shall end up with no industry at all.
I mean, there's so many changes going on in Britain just now. It's a huge changing country. It's like going through some of the biggest changes we've ever seen in the last 50 to 100 years. And yet nobody, or hardly anybody, is making stories about those. Why can't we do that?
They are on the telly, but they aren't.
Yeah, but not in cinema. Why not in cinema?
Because the producers are too stupid, I've told you already. All they do is sit around in hotels, they drive around in big cars, they never look at the world. if a producer comes to you, a producer will say, let's make a film like another film. They never say, let's look at the world, let's look at what's happening there. Aren't those people interesting? Let's make a film about that. They never have any passion. They don't live in the world. They have no feeling. They're dead people. And that's why we don't have a cinema, because they're the people who have the power in the cinema. They're the people that have the money, and they don't have the imagination to give the money to the right people.
But
Can it be done? Can it be done?
Who do you mean by producers?
Am I leaving now?
Who do you mean by producers?
Right on.
I mean, who really do you mean by producers? You mean producing companies. You don't mean, because there are very few producers. You could name producers on one hand. There are very few producers in the country. What has happened is, you've forbidden us to talk about funds, but in fact there are no funds now sitting here waiting to be used. Companies like Palace have to claw their way up in order to get the money.
If you had a big idea about something major changing in Britain, whatever it be, you know, from poverty, Thatcherism, anything, if you could make a film in the way the Americans do, in an entertaining, populist way, surely they would just be all over screens all over the world. So why are we not doing that? Money aside.
But why does a film like All the President's Men really work, which of course the Americans have always been great at showing us within the scope of their normal film entertainment base, the underside of American life. They've been really, over the years, over the decades, without fail, one comes along nearly every year like that.
One great advantage of the Americans is they treat screenwriting very, very seriously. It's taught brilliantly, which is not true here.
Yeah.
There's an incredible...
Terrible.
Just to take his example, All the President's Men, 3 men were writing it all at the same time. The director had 3 people out there, unbeknownst to each other, writing. There is a different attitude.
It's very
towards
unprecious,
writing.
isn't it?
Well, I think so. You may hate it, I'm sure you would, but I mean, there is an attitude that the writing isn't the most important thing, that the idea, the cinematic idea, is what's going on. I mean, actually, screenwriters are treated like shit in America.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're always being rewritten. I mean, and it's fun to work with them because they don't come in with a kind of, with respect to your good self, a kind of precious attitude that the words are in stone.
Well, what about the stars? What about the stars, apart from the screenwriters? We don't seem to produce any megastars. We have no De Niros, we have no Streets.
No John Cleese.
It's true.
Why don't we have them?
Well, I mean, there's not an industry here.
There was
Oh, you keep saying that, but I think it's also there's a sort of activism.
Isn't it something to do with
about
British?
it.
No, but isn't it something to do with British attitude?
If you ask these questions directly, it's because in America there aren't just De Niro and there aren't just Robert Redfords. There are hundreds and thousands of actors, kids, you know, men and women who, when they're kids, they think, I want to be a film star. How many kids now think, I want to be on EastEnders? What else is there for an actor? They say, I want to be
practical about it.
I want to be in Bros. That's where the kids go. That's where the younger talent goes.
We do have one or two.
We have one or two. Yeah, we have some good actors.
Take something like Bob Hoskins, but he still has to, in the end, go to Hollywood to be recognised as a protein actor.
Yeah, he's a great actor, but we don't have many kind of sex symbols. So
Well, John
due
Cleese
respect
has
to
got
Bob
a chance to be
Hoskins.
a movie star now, hasn't he? Now, what's he going to do? I mean, he's a friend of mine, so I can speak. He's going to not work for 15 months. Albert Finney, after Tom Jones, could have become a major movie star. He didn't work. He stopped working. There is no appetite here amongst actors to be in movies.
But I also, I mean, I think
what we
that's
do
stronger. I
actually
think
have
that's a
in
social
Britain-
thing, though, too.
What we do have in this country actually are wonderful actors. You go to the drama
Yeah,
school.
we're talking about movie stars,
But that's,
aren't we?
that's theatrical. But I wanted to also answer the wider question you were asking in a more kind of social way, which is thinking back, you know, Lynda, you were talking about Hammer and Ealing, or the moment. If you think of the moments where there has been a British cinema that's had some kind of social being and that people have all enjoyed, and you could talk about a film with somebody, you know, at the bus stop, and they might have actually seen the same film as you. That kind of moment.
It's just this hunger